In this chapter, we dive into the ultimate truth that shapes the course of every life. You truly become what you think, and the quality of your mind determines the quality of your destiny. For your thoughts are seeds that grow into actions, habits, character, and eventually into the very life you live. Therefore, if you think weakness, fear, and doubt, your life bends toward limitation. But if you think strength, confidence, and vision, your life unfolds into power and abundance. And that is why this chapter serves as the kaka, the blueprint, the framework of the entire book. Chapter 1. Every journey begins with a single realization. And the greatest realization of all is that you are not a victim of chance, but a creation of your own thoughts. For the life you are living today is nothing more than the reflection of the ideas you have allowed to grow inside your mind. And when you pause to examine the course of your life, the successes and failures, the joys and disappointments, you will always find that at the root of each experience there was a thought planted, nourished, and brought to life. And though this truth may at first seem difficult to accept, for it demands personal responsibility, it is also the most liberating truth you can ever discover, because it places the power of your destiny not in the hands of luck, fate, or others, but firmly in your own hands. For if your life is the result of your thoughts, then by changing your thoughts you can change your life. And if the seeds you have planted so far have been small, fearful, and filled with doubt, then naturally your reality has mirrored those seeds, bringing limitation, stagnation, and struggle. But if you now choose to plant new seeds, seeds of strength, courage, abundance, and vision, your future will begin to bloom with opportunities, blessings, and victories you once believed impossible. And this is not some distant promise, but an immediate reality, because thought is always working, whether you direct it consciously or leave it untamed. And just as a garden will grow weeds if not cultivated, so will your mind produce results by default if not guided. And those default results are often confusion, distraction, and limitation. But when you step in as the master gardener, tending, pruning, watering, and choosing what to grow, your life begins to transform before your very eyes. Think of the great leaders, inventors, and creators throughout history, those who rose above ordinary conditions to achieve extraordinary things, and you will find one truth in common among them: they thought differently. They chose to believe in possibilities when others saw impossibility. They held visions of greatness when others accepted mediocrity, and they refused to let their circumstances dictate the boundaries of their minds, instead allowing the power of their thoughts to dictate the boundaries of their circumstances. And so they rose, not because life handed them privilege, but because they dared to shape their inner world with courage and conviction. And this truth is not reserved for them alone, but available to you at this very moment. For the human mind is not selective in its power. It works the same for all who use it. Just as the soil makes no judgment on the seed it receives, whether it is a seed of roses or a seed of poison, it simply grows whatever is planted. And so too does the mind grow whatever thoughts are consistently sown into it. And if you wish from Chapter 2 to understand the power of the mind, is to understand the laws of life. For the mind is not just an invisible force within you, but the lens through which you interpret, filter, and respond to everything around you. And though most people live as though reality is fixed and absolute, the truth is that reality is always colored by the state of their thinking, and so two people can walk through the same street, face the same circumstances, or encounter the same challenge, yet one sees only obstacles, danger, and defeat, while the other sees opportunities, lessons, and possibilities. And the difference lies not in the world itself, but in the lens of the mind. For a clouded mind projects shadows onto everything, while a clear mind reveals the hidden brilliance of life. And if your lens is clouded with fear, resentment, or self-doubt, then the world will seem hostile, unfair, and heavy. But if your lens is polished with gratitude, courage, and clarity, then the same world will appear kind, abundant, and full of potential, and in this way the mind becomes not just a mirror, but a creator of experience, shaping the very texture of your days. The wise person, therefore, does not waste energy trying to bend the world to their will without first bending their own thoughts. For they know that if they change the way they think, the world around them inevitably changes, because their choices shift, their responses alter, and their energy attracts different outcomes. And this is why two individuals with the same resources, the same opportunities, and the same challenges can end up in entirely different places, one trapped by the prison of negative thought, the other liberated by the wings of possibility. If you observe yourself carefully, you will realize that your emotions, your conversations, and even the direction of your actions are constantly being shaped by what you choose to dwell on. And when you replay past pains or imagine future losses, your body reacts with stress, your heart grows heavy, and your path seems dim. But when you nurture thoughts of hope, courage, and progress, your body fills with energy, your spirit rises, and your path seems clear, proving that the mind is the first cause of both suffering and success. The mistake most people make is believing that their feelings are reactions to life, when in truth their feelings are reactions to their own thoughts about life. And when you learn this distinction, you awaken to your true CAPTR3. Your thoughts are not passive visitors drifting through your mind without consequence. They are builders, architects, and laborers constructing the house you live in every single day. And though many people blame society, circumstances, or even luck for the structure of their lives, the truth is that every brick in the house of your destiny has been laid by the thoughts you have entertained, most often, whether consciously or unconsciously. For thought is creative energy that never remains idle, and just as the wind cannot be seen, but its effects are visible in the swaying of trees, so too are your thoughts, invisible yet undeniably visible in the shape of your character, your habits, your relationships, and your future. If you repeatedly think small, weak, and fearful thoughts, you are laying bricks of limitation, walls of insecurity, and ceilings of doubt, until you find yourself living in a narrow, suffocating structure where opportunities cannot enter and growth cannot breathe. But if you dare to think bold, confident, and expansive thoughts, you are laying foundations of strength, walls of vision, and ceilings that stretch upward into possibility, until you find yourself in a mansion of abundance, freedom, and joy, a space where opportunities come knocking because the structure you have built is strong enough to house them. Consider for a moment that every action you have ever taken began first as a thought, whether it was a fleeting idea or a carefully nurtured plan, and that action, repeated often enough, became a habit, and those habits, over time, wove themselves into your character, and that character, consistent and recognizable, became the life you now live. And so at the very root of every visible outcome stands an invisible thought, which means that to change the outer house of your life, you must first change the inner blueprint of your thoughts. Life does not unfold randomly like scattered stones on a road. CATER4 discipline of thought is the secret art that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. For while most people allow their minds to wander aimlessly like wild horses without reins, dragged in every direction by impulses, distractions, fears, and habits, the few who rise above mediocrity and carve their names in history are those who learn to hold the reins firmly, directing every thought with purpose, clarity, and intention, because they understand that the mind left unchecked becomes a restless servant, but the mind brought under discipline becomes the most powerful master, capable of bending circumstances, opportunities, and even destiny itself to its command. And though at first this mastery feels difficult, like taming a storm or holding back a raging river, the practice of training thought is no different from the training of the body, for just as muscles grow stronger through consistent exercise and control sharpens through daily practice, so too does the mind become obedient, focused, and loyal to the higher will when exercised with patience and persistence. Most people fail not because they lack intelligence, talent, or opportunity, but because they lack discipline of thought. Surrendering too quickly to doubt when challenged, entertaining distractions when focus is required, or allowing fear to dictate their actions instead of faith, and so their lives become a reflection of scattered energy, half-built dreams, and unfulfilled potential. But those who learn to discipline the mind refuse to let fear have the final word. They refuse to allow distraction to steal their attention, and they refuse to permit negative thinking to poison their vision, for they understand that every great creation, every achievement, and every triumph begins not in the hands, but in the mind that first conceives it. To discipline your thoughts is to become selective, to treat each thought like a guest knocking at the door of your inner home, and instead of welcoming every guest, you ask, does this thought serve my highest purpose, or does it weaken me? And if it strengthens you, you let it in, feed it, and let it stay. But if it weakens you, you dismiss it at once, and though at first this gatekeeping requires effort, over time it becomes as natural as breathing, and your mind grows accustomed to dwelling only on what uplifts, empowers, and builds you toward greatness. This discipline also demands that you train your attention, because in a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless streams of information, your attention is the most valuable currency you possess, and where you invest it determines what grows in your life. For if you scatter it, CATR 5, the law of attraction is not magic, nor is it some mysterious force reserved only for mystics or dreamers, but it is the natural consequence of focus, attention, and belief. For whatever you dwell upon in the secret chambers of your mind inevitably grows stronger in your awareness, shapes the lens through which you interpret reality, influences the choices you make, and directs the actions you take, and over time those actions create results that mirror the very thoughts that birth them, so that what you consistently hold in your inner world becomes the outer world you inhabit. And this truth is evident in the smallest details of daily life, as well as the grandest achievements of destiny. For when you dwell constantly on fear of failure, you begin to see failures everywhere. Your eyes become trained to notice obstacles instead of opportunities. Your body begins to shrink back in hesitation. Your tone becomes uncertain, and your behavior unconscious to progress, thereby fulfilling the prophecy you yourself planted. But when you instead choose to hold thoughts of success, abundance, and courage, your perception shifts toward possibilities. Your eyes open to hidden chances that were always there but unseen. Your body grows stronger with confidence. Your words become bold, and your steps more decisive. And as a result, life begins to reflect back the images you have consistently projected upon it, not because life changed by itself, but because your thoughts changed the way you interacted with it. This law operates as surely and as neutrally as gravity, making no moral judgments about what you choose to attract, simply delivering into your hands the fruits of your dominant focus, so that those who habitually nurture negativity, resentment, or self-pity attract circumstances and people that match those vibrations, while those who hold gratitude, resilience, and ambition attract people, opportunities, and events that mirror those higher states of mind. And though many dismiss this principle as coincidence or luck, closer reflection reveals that it is not luck at all but law, for energy moves toward where attention goes, and whatever picture you paint most vividly in your imagination gradually shapes your decisions, until that picture stands before you as reality. Every great achievement known to humanity began first as a thought clearly imagined and deeply believed. Whether it was an invention that changed the course of history, a movement that reshaped nations, or a personal triumph that lifted an individual from despair into greatness, And in every case the principle was the same. Hold the vision with such intensity and persistence that it begins to feel real, and soon it becomes real, not by magic, but by the alignment of thought, feeling, and action moving together in harmony. The law of attraction, therefore, is not passive daydreaming, nor is it simply wishing for life to deliver what you want while you sit idly by. It is an active partnership between the mind and the world, where you direct your thoughts to build an inner picture. You allow that picture to generate the emotions that align with it, and then you act in ways that bring it to life. And in this way thought becomes vision, vision becomes belief, belief becomes action, and action becomes destiny. If you spend your mental energy replaying regrets of the past, or anticipating disasters of the future, you are planting seeds of scarcity that will grow into more of the same. But if you choose to spend your energy imagining victories, visualizing abundance, affirming strength, and believing in possibilities, then you are planting seeds of greatness that will, in their own season, blossom into tangible results. The difference between those who achieve and those who do not is rarely a matter of intelligence or talent, but more often a matter of inner focus, because the achiever has learned to discipline their thoughts toward what they want instead of what they fear, and in doing so they set into motion a series of inner and outer events that pull them steadily toward success. To master this law in your own life, you must learn the habit of mental vigilance, catching yourself when negative images begin to dominate your mind and replacing them with images of what you desire to see. And though this replacement may feel artificial at first, with repetition it becomes natural, and your mind becomes trained to automatically attract what uplifts rather than what diminishes you. This is not about ignoring challenges or pretending problems do not exist, but about choosing to focus on solutions rather than the problem, about holding faith in the possibility of victory rather than drowning in the certainty of defeat. For whatever you focus on grows, and your life is a garden that will bear fruit according to the seeds of thought you sow. The law of attraction does not promise ease without effort, but it promises alignment. That when your mind is focused, your emotions are aligned, and your actions are consistent, the universe responds in kind, drawing to you the resources, people, and opportunities necessary to complete the picture you first painted within. And when you begin to live with this awareness, you realize that you are never powerless, never truly stuck, but always a thought away from redirecting your path. For your inner world is the blueprint, and your outer world is the construction, and if you want to change the house you live in, you must first change the design you carry in your mind, because whatever you attract is not random, but the inevitable harvest of the seeds you have planted with your focus. CHTR 6. No transformation can occur until you recognize that the mind is like a garden, always alive, always producing, always responding to the seeds that are planted within it, whether you plant them consciously or neglect it entirely. For the soil of thought does not rest or remain empty, and if you do not take charge as its gardener, weeds of doubt, fear, anger, laziness, and self-pity grow naturally and automatically, choking the delicate flowers of courage, vision, and discipline, leaving you to live in a mental landscape of chaos and frustration. But when you step into your rightful role as the master gardener of your own soul, you begin to treat every thought as a seed with potential, asking yourself if it will grow into fruit that nourishes you or into poison that harms you. And with this awareness you begin the daily practice of pulling out weeds, of refusing to let destructive thoughts take root, and of planting seeds of hope, faith, resilience, and clarity, watering them with repetition, affirmations, and deliberate focus, until the garden of your mind grows into a sanctuary of strength and inspiration. Just as a real garden requires patience, persistence, and daily tending, so too does the mind demand regular care, For you cannot plant seeds once and expect a harvest forever, nor can you pull out weeds one day and expect the soil to remain pure, because neglect quickly invites decay, and the gardener who fails to visit his land daily returns to find it overrun by thorns. So too must you tend the inner garden each morning, each night, and in every idle moment, ensuring that only the seeds of greatness are allowed to grow. The mind, like soil, does not discriminate between seeds. It will grow whatever is given to it, whether it be seeds of confidence or seeds of fear, seeds of abundance or seeds of scarcity, seeds of forgiveness or seeds of bitterness, and this impartiality is both a blessing and a danger, because it means that you always have the power to create beauty, but it also means you are always at risk of allowing ugliness to take over, and that is why awareness is the gatekeeper, the fence that guards your mental garden, ensuring that you do not casually allow in the words, images, and influences of the world without questioning whether they serve your higher purpose. Every book you read, every conversation you engage in, every song you listen to, every piece of media you consume, every thought you entertain, these are seeds, and without realizing it, you are constantly planting and watering them. And so you must ask yourself what kind of garden you wish to live in. For if you feed your mind with negativity, gossip, complaints, and despair, then your inner garden will reflect that, and soon your outer life will also. But if you feed your mind with wisdom, courage, faith, and noble ideas, then your inner garden will blossom with beauty, and your outer life will mirror the abundance of that inner landscape. The most successful, joyful, and fulfilled people are not those who were given the richest soil, but those who became the most vigilant gardeners, those who learned to uproot weeds quickly before they spread, who nurtured the seeds of possibility long before anyone else could see the plant, who refused to abandon their garden in storms, but instead worked harder to protect it, and in time their harvest fed not only themselves but generations after them, proving that the work you do in your mind today will bear fruit far beyond what you can see. Transformation, then, is not a sudden miracle, but the gradual blossoming of the garden you have tended day by day, season by season, thought by thought, until what was once barren becomes lush, what was once filled with thorns becomes fragrant with roses, and what was once a place of sorrow becomes a place of peace. And so, the truth is simple yet profound. You cannot expect to live a life of joy if you allow weeds of bitterness to grow unchecked. You cannot expect a life of abundance if you allow seeds of scarcity to dominate your soil. You cannot expect to live a life of courage if you water fear more than faith. But if you take responsibility, if you rise each day with the resolve to plant wisely, water patiently, and protect vigilantly, then your garden will reward you with a harvest more abundant than you ever dreamed, because the law of the mind is the same as the law of nature. You reap what you sow, and if you sow generously, faithfully, and intentionally, then your life will be a living testimony of the beauty that grows when the garden of the mind is mastered. CHPTR 7. Greatness is not born in a single moment of inspiration, nor is it handed out as a gift reserved for the fortunate few. It is forged in the quiet, unseen work of the mind, where thought patterns are shaped, disciplined, and repeated until they create the foundation upon which all action rests. For every champion, leader, and visionary first fought and won the inner battle of thought long before they triumphed in the outer arena of life. And though the world often sees only the medals, the achievements, and the victories, what it does not see is the years of mental conditioning, the daily discipline of believing in the goal when no evidence yet existed, the silent war against doubt, fear, and distraction that could have derailed the vision. And it is precisely this hidden mental labor that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. When defeat seemed inevitable, the great ones held firm to thoughts of victory. When critics mocked and obstacles rose like mountains, they refused to surrender their inner image of success, and this unshakable persistence of thought became the fire that sustained them through darkness until light finally broke through, proving that greatness is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of thought in the midst of struggle. If you wish to rise above mediocrity, you must not first ask what actions to take or what opportunities to chase, but rather what thoughts must dominate your mind, for action without the right thought is like a ship without a compass, moving constantly but wandering endlessly. But thought that is focused, unwavering, and aligned with purpose will guide every action with clarity, ensuring that every step, no matter how small, moves you toward your destiny. Consider the sculptor who begins with a block of stone. Before he lifts his chisel, he first sees the statue within his mind, holding the image so clearly that every strike of the tool is guided by it. And in the same way, your life is a sculpture, and your mind is the vision that shapes it. So if your mental image is blurred by doubt, confusion, and fear, your actions will be random and ineffective. But if your inner vision is sharp, unwavering, and fed daily with belief, your actions will cut with precision, revealing the greatness hidden within. The tragedy for most people is that they abandon their inner vision too quickly, allowing one failure or one harsh word from another to shatter the fragile image they held, and without that image to sustain them, their actions lose strength, their resolve weakens, and they settle for mediocrity. But those who achieve greatness understand that failure is not a signal to quit, but a test of persistence, and they hold their vision with even greater intensity when challenged, knowing that the stronger the storm, the deeper the roots must grow. This persistence of thought does not mean ignoring reality, but rather holding the higher reality in your mind until it becomes your truth, refusing to let temporary conditions define your permanent destiny. And in this way, thought becomes the anchor that steadies you through storms and the compass that points you forward when the path is unclear. Greatness is therefore not a matter of chance, but of choice, a choice made daily in the quiet of the mind to believe in possibility when others doubt, to see opportunity where others see only obstacles, to speak words of faith when others complain, and to imagine a brighter tomorrow even when today seems dark. For the individual who can maintain such thoughts is unstoppable, because sooner or later their actions will align with their vision, their opportunities will match their belief, and their reality will bow to the image they refuse to release. If you desire to live a life of significance, to build something lasting, or to become someone others look to for inspiration, then you must begin where all greatness begins, in the privacy of your own thoughts, cultivating them with patience, disciplining them with persistence, and holding them with faith until they become the unshakable foundation of everything you do, because true greatness is first a victory of the mind before it ever becomes a victory in the world. Chippy R8. The mind has two voices, one of faith and one of fear, and though they are both present within you every single day, it is always your choice which one you allow to grow louder, for whichever voice you feed with your attention, your energy, and your belief will dominate your life, and this inner dialogue, often unnoticed, becomes the guiding force behind your decisions, your emotions, and your destiny. And while many people live in misery because they unknowingly feed the voice of fear, repeating its lies until they no longer recognize them as lies but as truth, the few who rise to greatness are those who choose to strengthen the voice of faith, even when fear is shouting the loudest, until faith becomes the natural song of their hearts and the steady compass of their minds. The voice of fear whispers of limitation, telling you that you are not enough, that failure is inevitable, that others are better, that the world is against you, and though it speaks softly at first, each time you listen, it grows bolder, weaving chains of doubt around your mind, until you no longer dare to step beyond what is safe and familiar, trapping you in the comfort of mediocrity, where dreams slowly wither and die. But the voice of faith speaks of possibility, reminding you that you are capable, that strength is within you, that every setback carries the seed of a greater comeback. And though at first this voice may seem faint, almost drowned by fear, every time you feed it with affirmations, visualization, courage, and gratitude, it grows louder, clearer, and stronger, until it becomes a mighty roar that silences fear. The struggle between these two voices is the eternal battle of the human spirit, and it is fought not once but every day, in the small choices you make, in the thoughts you entertain, in the words you speak to yourself, and in the way you interpret the events of your life. For when something goes wrong, fear will say, "See, this proves you will never succeed," while faith will say, "See, this is simply part of the process, and victory is still ahead." And your response to that moment determines not only how you feel, but how you act, and therefore what results you create. The person who consistently chooses to listen to fear will shrink back, avoid risks, and sabotage their own opportunities, confirming the very lies they believed, while the one who chooses to listen to faith will step forward, act boldly, and create opportunities that seemed invisible before, proving that faith was right all along. And so you must learn to become a careful guardian of your inner dialogue, paying attention to which voice you are feeding. For you cannot silence either permanently, but you can starve one while strengthening the other, and whichever you starve grows weak, while whichever you nourish grows strong. Fear thrives on inaction, procrastination, and self-pity, while faith thrives on action, discipline, and persistence. And the surest way to weaken fear is to move forward in spite of it, to prove with your actions that you are greater than your doubts, while the surest way to strengthen faith is to affirm with your words and your imagination the victories you desire, until your mind accepts them as real. And once this acceptance takes root, your body and spirit align with it, propelling you toward the fulfillment of that vision. It is important to understand that listening to faith does not mean ignoring reality, pretending that obstacles do not exist, or living in denial, but rather it means acknowledging the obstacles while still choosing to believe in solutions. It means recognizing fear without surrendering to it, and it means standing firm in the conviction that the future can be brighter than the past, no matter how dark the present may appear. The greatest individuals in history, whether leaders, innovators, or visionaries, all had moments when fear tried to overpower them, when doubts screamed louder than hope, yet they made the conscious choice to hold on to faith. And because they did, they acted in ways that changed the world. And you too carry within you the same choice every day, to let fear dictate your life, or to let faith guide it. And the destiny you create will always be the reflection of that choice. If you wish to rise higher, you must practice feeding the voice of faith daily. For just as muscles grow stronger with repeated exercise, so too does faith grow stronger with repeated attention. So begin and end each day with thoughts of gratitude, affirmations of strength, and visions of success. And when fear whispers, do not argue with it. Simply starve it by refusing to dwell on its lies, and over time its voice will fade into the background, while the voice of faith becomes the natural rhythm of your soul. In this way, your inner dialogue becomes your greatest ally, and once faith becomes the dominant voice in your mind, there is nothing you cannot attempt, nothing you cannot endure, and nothing you cannot ultimately achieve. For faith, when fed, transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies, while fear, when starved, loses all power to chain you, leaving you free to walk boldly into the life you were meant to live. Chapter 9. Discipline is the bridge between thought and reality, the invisible thread that ties your inner vision to your outer world, and without it the most powerful dreams remain only fantasies, flickering images that bring momentary comfort but never transform into tangible results. For while the mind is the soil where ideas are planted, it is discipline that waters them daily until they grow into towering trees of accomplishment. And this is why countless people, though gifted with creativity, intelligence, and ambition, fail to achieve greatness. They possess the seed but neglect the cultivation, abandoning their goals when progress is slow, giving up when effort feels heavy, or chasing fleeting pleasures instead of enduring the consistency required for lasting achievement. Discipline is not a punishment but a form of freedom. For the person who lacks it is a slave to moods, impulses, and distractions, tossed around by circumstances and emotions like a ship without an anchor, while the disciplined person, though appearing restricted by routines and commitments, actually enjoys the deepest form of liberty, because they are free from the tyranny of laziness, procrastination, and regret, and they walk steadily toward their chosen destiny with a confidence that only consistency can provide. To master your mind is to master your habits, because every thought, no matter how lofty, must eventually find expression in action, and repeated action becomes habit, while habit crystallizes into destiny, and discipline is the guardian of this process, ensuring that your thoughts do not remain idle, but are transformed into patterns of behavior that align with your vision. For what use is a positive thought if it is not followed by a positive action? And what use is a great idea if it dies in the silence of procrastination? The disciplined person rises each day with clarity, knowing what must be done and refusing to allow excuses, discomfort, or distraction to deter them, because they understand that success is not built on occasional bursts of inspiration, but on the quiet repetition of small, deliberate steps. And though such steps may seem insignificant in the moment, when multiplied over weeks, months, and years, they create a momentum so powerful that nothing can stop its course, proving that greatness is not sudden but cumulative, born from the steady layering of effort upon effort. Consider the athlete who disciplines the body to train when tired, the student who disciplines the mind to study when tempted by entertainment, or the leader who disciplines the emotions to remain calm when provoked. Chapter 10. The environment you immerse yourself in is the silent architect of your destiny, shaping your thoughts, your behaviors, and ultimately your outcomes in ways you may not even consciously perceive. For while you may believe that your willpower alone is enough to carry you to greatness, the truth is that the people, places, and influences that surround you act as either invisible chains that hold you down or powerful winds that lift you higher. And if you are not intentional about your environment, you will find yourself becoming the product of circumstances rather than the master of them. Every day, your mind absorbs signals, whether through the words spoken by those you spend time with, the media you consume, the habits of your peers, or even the physical state of your surroundings. And these signals either reinforce positive, empowering thoughts or feed doubt, negativity, and stagnation. So if you are constantly surrounded by complainers, critics, or dream killers, your vision will eventually blur and your spirit will weaken. But if you surround yourself with people who dream boldly, act courageously, and encourage growth, then your own thoughts will be lifted to match theirs, and success will feel not like a distant hope, but a natural way of living. History and psychology alike confirm that human beings are wired to adapt to their environments, often unconsciously mirroring the attitudes, expectations, and standards of those around them, which is why the saying, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," carries such weight. For without vigilance you may unknowingly inherit their limitations, fears, and mediocrity, or, if wisely chosen, you may absorb their confidence, discipline, and vision. So the question you must ask yourself is not only, what do I want to become, but also, who am I surrounding myself with that either supports or sabotages that becoming? Just as a seed planted in fertile soil, nourished by sunlight and water, flourishes into a strong tree, so too will your mind flourish when it is placed in an environment rich with positivity, knowledge, and encouragement. And just as a seed left in barren, toxic soil struggles to grow no matter how strong it may be, so too will your potential be stifled if your environment constantly poisons your thoughts with negativity, distraction, and hopelessness, which is why the conscious design of your environment is not a luxury, but a necessity if you desire to master your mind and transform your life. This means creating both an internal and external space that nurtures growth. Internally, by feeding your mind with uplifting books, empowering conversations, and affirmations of strength, and externally by decluttering your physical space, organizing your routines, and surrounding yourself with individuals whose presence challenges you to rise higher instead of dragging you down. Discipline, focus, and determination are vital, but they are significantly easier to maintain when your environment supports them rather than constantly testing them, because even the strongest willpower can be eroded if it is continually bombarded with temptation, negativity, or chaos, while even a modest will can become unshakable if nurtured within an environment designed for growth. And this is why successful individuals are often intentional about the spaces they inhabit, the media they consume, the relationships they maintain, and the habits they cultivate within their surroundings. If you spend time in places of learning, you naturally grow wiser. If you spend time with people who value health, you naturally become healthier. If you spend time with visionaries, your own vision expands. And if you spend time in silence and reflection, your inner clarity sharpens. But if you waste hours in chaotic, toxic, or aimless spaces, your thoughts scatter, your discipline weakens, and your dreams lose their shine. The truth is that you cannot consistently rise above your environment unless you deliberately redesign it. And those who fail to recognize this often wonder why they struggle to maintain progress, not realizing that their surroundings are quietly undermining their efforts. So take control and craft an environment that reflects the life you desire, for in doing so you not only support your current self, but also shape the future version of yourself who will thank you for making the right choices today. This may mean letting go of relationships that no longer serve your growth, reducing exposure to toxic media, redesigning your workspace to inspire focus, or seeking out mentors and communities that uplift and challenge you. And though such changes may feel uncomfortable, they are essential sacrifices for the greater reward of becoming the person you were meant to be. When you take ownership of your environment, you send a powerful signal to your subconscious mind that you are serious about your growth, and this signal strengthens your resolve, clarifies your focus, and accelerates your journey, turning what once felt like uphill battles into smoother paths. Because when everything around you supports your vision, your energy is no longer wasted fighting resistance, but is instead channeled fully into progress. Therefore, understand that your environment is not neutral. It is either pulling you forward or pushing you backward, either feeding your greatness or suffocating it. And when you master the art of consciously shaping it, you align the outer world with the inner world, creating harmony that multiplies your strength, sharpens your focus, and brings your dreams within reach, proving that the road to mastering your mind is not walked alone in isolation, but paved by the environments you choose and the influences you allow to surround your thoughts every single day. CHTR 11 Gratitude is the lens that transforms the way you see the world, turning ordinary moments into treasures, struggles into lessons, and scarcity into abundance. For while the human mind is naturally inclined to focus on what is missing, what is broken, or what is yet to be achieved, gratitude redirects attention to what is present, what is working, and what is already a blessing, creating a shift in perspective so powerful that it alters not only your emotions, but also your actions, your relationships, and ultimately your destiny, because when the mind is trained to see the good, it produces hope, resilience, and confidence, while when it is trained to dwell on lack, it produces doubt, envy, and despair. And this difference determines whether you live as a victim of circumstances or as a master of your inner world. Gratitude is not denial of hardship nor ignorance of pain, but rather the conscious choice to acknowledge that even within difficulty, there is something to be thankful for, whether it be the strength gained through endurance, the wisdom learned through failure, or the opportunity to begin again. And those who live in gratitude are not free from challenges, but are empowered to rise above them, for their thoughts refuse to sink into hopelessness, instead clinging to the light that gratitude always reveals. Science confirms what wisdom has long taught, that gratitude rewires the brain, releasing chemicals of joy and reducing stress, creating a state of well-being that strengthens both body and mind. And those who practice gratitude consistently are proven to be more optimistic, healthier, and more successful, not because their lives are easier, but because their perception is sharper, allowing them to notice opportunities that others overlook and to persevere where others quit. The power of gratitude lies in its simplicity, for it requires no wealth, no special skill, no perfect circumstance. It requires only a willing heart and a disciplined mind that pauses long enough to recognize the blessings that are often hidden in plain sight. The breath you take without effort, the relationships that bring comfort, the knowledge gained through experience, the food that sustains you, the chances life continues to offer even after failure, and the gift of another day to pursue your purpose. Yet many neglect gratitude, waiting for grand victories before giving thanks, not realizing that the more they withhold gratitude, the less joy they feel, for joy does not come from receiving more, but from appreciating what already is. And the irony is that those who master gratitude attract even greater blessings, for a grateful heart creates an aura of positivity that draws people, opportunities, and success, while an ungrateful heart repels them, suffocating even the blessings it already holds. Gratitude, when practiced daily, becomes the foundation of mental strength, for in moments of hardship, it reminds you of what remains instead of what was lost. In moments of doubt, it reminds you of past victories, and in moments of temptation, it reminds you of what truly matters, grounding you in values that cannot be shaken. And this grounding protects the mind from being tossed about by every storm, keeping you steady, resilient, and focused. To cultivate gratitude is to master one of the most profound disciplines of thought, because it requires intentionality, writing down blessings each day, speaking words of thanks aloud, expressing appreciation to others, and training the mind to pause and reflect before rushing into complaint. And though at first this may feel forced, with repetition it becomes natural, until gratitude is not just a practice but a way of seeing, a constant filter through which life is viewed. Imagine two people facing the same circumstance. One loses a job and sinks into bitterness, focusing only on rejection and failure, while the other, though also hurt, gives thanks for the skills learned, the experience gained, and the chance to find a path more aligned with purpose. Both faced the same reality, yet one became imprisoned by it, while the other grew stronger. And the difference was not in circumstance, but in perspective, the perspective created by gratitude. Great thinkers, leaders, and spiritual teachers throughout history have all recognized gratitude as the cornerstone of inner mastery, teaching that wealth without gratitude produces emptiness, success without gratitude produces arrogance, and life without gratitude produces despair. But even in the smallest life, gratitude produces richness beyond measure, because the grateful mind finds joy not only in achievements, but in the very act of living. To master your mind, you must therefore train it to dwell in gratitude, not occasionally but daily, not superficially but deeply, not only when life is smooth, but especially when it is difficult, for gratitude is not tested in abundance but in adversity, and it is in adversity that gratitude becomes a shield against despair and a light guiding you forward. When you wake each morning with gratitude for breath, for time, for opportunity, and when you end each day with gratitude for lessons, for love, for survival, then your mind becomes anchored in positivity, immune to the toxic influence of envy, fear, and complaint, and you begin to see that life is not happening against you but for you, shaping you into who you must become. Gratitude does not remove the journey's challenges, but it transforms how you walk it, turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones and deserts into places of hidden treasure. And when your mind is anchored in this truth, you no longer chase happiness as something distant but carry it within you, unshakable and ever-present, proving that the secret to mastering your mind is not only in controlling your thoughts, but in filling them with gratitude that transforms your entire life into a blessing. Visualization is the art of creating your future twice, first in the unseen realm of the mind, and then in the visible realm of reality. And those who master it understand that every achievement begins not with the movement of hands or the effort of labor, but with the quiet, deliberate shaping of images within the imagination, for the mind is the blueprint of destiny, and the clearer and more persistent the vision within, the more powerfully it draws corresponding actions, circumstances, and opportunities into alignment, while the vague, the doubtful, and the unfocused wander aimlessly without direction or purpose. When you visualize, you awaken the creative faculty of the brain that cannot distinguish vividly imagined experiences from those physically lived, which means that by consistently rehearsing success in your mind, you condition your body and spirit to accept it as possible, even inevitable, and in this way you build confidence, reduce fear, and create an inner map that guides you toward your goal with precision. Consider the athlete who closes their eyes before a race and imagines every stride, every breath, every surge of energy, until their mind and muscles are already familiar with victory before the race even begins. Or the speaker who rehearses in silence, picturing the audience's nods and applause until their nerves transform into certainty when they step on stage. Or the visionary entrepreneur who sees the company, the product, the impact long before the first brick is laid, holding the image so strongly that every decision afterward bends reality toward that picture. These are not fantasies but disciplined exercises of visualization, which when combined with persistence and action, carve paths to greatness. The tragedy for many is that they unknowingly use visualization against themselves, dwelling on failure, rejection, and catastrophe until their minds create inner movies of defeat, rehearsing excuses instead of victories. And because thought precedes action, their lives begin to echo the fears they constantly imagined, proving that visualization is not optional but inevitable. It will either be used consciously to design a brighter future or unconsciously to repeat cycles of limitation, and the choice rests with you. Visualization works because the subconscious mind, which governs habits, emotions, and even bodily responses, responds not to logic or argument, but to images and feelings impressed upon it. So when you consistently feed it with mental pictures of strength, success, and joy, it organizes your behavior to match those pictures, aligning your energy with the opportunities that bring them to pass. But when you feed it images of doubt, failure, and despair, it does the same, pulling you unconsciously toward the very things you wish to avoid. To harness this power, you must make visualization a daily practice, not something vague or occasional but vivid, specific, and emotionally charged, closing your eyes each morning and night to see your goals as if already achieved, engaging all senses to feel the texture of success, hear the sounds of triumph, and taste the satisfaction of accomplishment. For the more real it becomes to your mind, the more natural it becomes to your actions. Visualization is not daydreaming, which is passive and fleeting. It is active creation, where thought is focused with intention and repeated with discipline until the inner world becomes so clear that it demands expression in the outer world. And this inner clarity is what separates the drifter who hopes from the achiever who knows. When doubt arises, visualization becomes your antidote, for instead of arguing with fear, you replace it with a stronger picture of victory, and when fatigue sets in, visualization renews motivation, reminding you of the desolation that makes the struggle worthwhile, and when obstacles appear, visualization sharpens resilience, helping you to see not only the wall, but also the way over it, through it, or around it, keeping your mind aligned with solutions rather than trapped in problems. Great leaders, innovators, and creators have all testified to the power of holding a vision before its manifestation, and history confirms that no cathedral, invention, or movement was built without first being fully constructed in the unseen architecture of the mind. And your life is no different, for whether you realize it or not, you are always building something inwardly that will eventually appear outwardly, and the wise choose to build deliberately through visualization. Begin now by deciding what you truly want, then craft that desire into a clear picture, refusing to let it be blurred by doubt or diluted by the opinions of others, and return to this picture daily, feeding it with belief, strengthening it with emotion, and supporting it with action, until your entire being is aligned with it. For when the vision within is unshakable, no force without can prevent its fulfillment. In this way, visualization becomes not just a tool but a way of living, teaching you that you are not a victim of random fate, but a creator of chosen destiny. And when you master this practice, you will find that life begins to mirror the images you hold most firmly, proving that to see clearly within is to live powerfully without, and that the mind, when disciplined through visualization, is the greatest force for transformation that you will ever possess. CFTR 13. Resilience is the quiet strength that transforms hardship into fuel, adversity into wisdom, and setbacks into stepping stones, and it is perhaps the truest measure of mental mastery, because life will never be free from storms, disappointments, or unexpected turns. Yet those who learn to rise again after being knocked down, who learn to bend without breaking, and who choose growth over despair, prove that the power of the human spirit is greater than any circumstance it may face. And resilience is not merely the ability to survive difficulty, but the art of using it to thrive, to emerge stronger, wiser, and more determined than before. For while the weak curse the challenge, the resilient bless it for the strength it has called forth. Every great life story is a story of resilience, where failure did not mark the end, but instead became the beginning of a new path. And history is filled with examples of men and women who endured rejection, loss, and repeated defeats, yet refused to surrender their inner vision, and because they chose persistence over despair, the world eventually celebrated their victories, without always remembering the countless times they fell. But resilience is not a gift given to a chosen few. It is a discipline available to all, cultivated in the thoughts you choose and the meaning you assign to your struggles. When hardship arrives, your mind has two choices: to interpret it as evidence of defeat or as an invitation to grow, and the resilient mind always chooses growth, asking not, "Why me?" but, "What can I learn from this? How can I rise from this? What hidden strength can this difficulty reveal?" And by shifting the narrative, pain becomes teacher instead of tormentor, and setbacks become training instead of tragedy. To build resilience, one must cultivate perspective, the ability to see beyond the present moment, and to understand that difficulties, no matter how crushing they feel, are temporary and often disguised opportunities, and just as storms eventually pass, leaving behind clear skies, so too do life's darkest moments eventually give way to seasons of renewal, but only for those who keep moving forward rather than quitting in despair. The resilient person refuses to define themselves by failure, understanding that to fall is human but to rise is divine, and they realize that mistakes are not markers of inadequacy but milestones of progress, each one carrying the lesson needed to step closer to success. And this belief gives them the courage to attempt again and again until victory arrives. For they know that perseverance is often the difference between those who dream and those who achieve. Yet resilience is not only about persistence, it is also about flexibility, the ability to adapt when the path changes, to adjust when plans crumble, to pivot when doors close, because rigidity in thought breeds frustration, but flexibility, grounded in faith, breeds possibility, and those who thrive are those who remain committed to the destination, but flexible with the route, refusing to let one closed door convince them that all doors are locked. Resilience also requires hope, for without hope the will to rise fades, and hope is born from thoughts that choose to focus not on what is lost, but on what still remains, not on what is broken, but on what can be built, not on the pain of the present, but on the promise of the future. And such thoughts, repeated daily, keep the flame of resilience alive, even in the darkest nights. To practice resilience, you must also embrace patience, because transformation through adversity is not immediate, and just as pressure over time transforms coal into diamond, so too does pressure over time transform character into strength, and the resilient person does not demand instant relief, but trusts the process, knowing that endurance today creates greatness tomorrow. Resilience thrives when supported by gratitude, for gratitude shifts the focus from what is missing to what is present, reminding the mind of blessings that remain even in difficulty. And this reminder fuels the spirit to keep moving forward, instead of sinking into despair, while visualization strengthens resilience by holding a mental picture of future victory so firmly that no present defeat can erase it, creating an inner certainty that tomorrow will be brighter than today. To live with resilience is to understand that life is not about avoiding struggle, but about mastering it, not about living without pain, but about using pain as a ladder to rise higher. And when the mind is trained to interpret every setback as preparation, every loss as refinement, and every trial as training, then no circumstance has the power to destroy you, for you have already chosen to transform it into strength. Those who cultivate resilience become unshakable, like trees with deep roots that stand firm through storms, like rivers that carve valleys by flowing endlessly against resistance, and like stars that shine brightest in the darkest night, and their lives inspire others, not because they lived without suffering, but because they refused to let suffering define them, proving that resilience is not just survival but triumph. Therefore, if you wish to master your mind, commit to building resilience daily by embracing challenges instead of fleeing them, by reinterpreting failures as stepping stones, by choosing hope over despair, and by refusing to stay down when life knocks you over. For resilience is not a single act, but a habit of thought and a way of being. And when it becomes the fabric of your mind, no storm can break you, no defeat can define you, and no obstacle can stop you, because you will always find within yourself the power to rise again, stronger, wiser, and more determined, until victory is no longer a question of if but only of when. Sheep TR 14 Focus is the sharpened edge of the mind, the discipline of directing thought and energy toward one aim until it pierces through distraction, resistance, and chaos to produce results that scattered effort could never achieve. For while talent, opportunity, and even desire may be abundant, it is focus that separates the dreamers from the doers, the starters from the finishers, and the average from the extraordinary, and without it, the most brilliant ideas are wasted like sunlight scattered, instead of concentrated like a laser that can cut through steel. In the modern world where countless distractions compete for your attention, messages, notifications, entertainment, the endless noise of opinions and obligations, focus has become rarer than intelligence and more valuable than knowledge, because knowledge without focus becomes confusion, but focus applied to knowledge becomes mastery, and mastery is what transforms ordinary individuals into leaders, creators, and visionaries who shape the world rather than being shaped by it. Focus begins with clarity of thought, the ability to decide what truly matters, and to silence the seductive pull of everything that does not. For the human mind, left undisciplined, will wander endlessly, chasing comfort, novelty, and the urgent instead of the important, and those who fail to train their focus will live lives full of activity, but empty of achievement, moving constantly yet going nowhere, while those who master focus live with purpose, moving slowly perhaps, but steadily toward greatness. Focus requires sacrifice, because to give your attention fully to one pursuit means withdrawing it from countless others, and this sacrifice often feels painful in the moment. Saying no to leisure, to distraction, to opportunities that glitter but do not align with your vision. But the disciplined mind understands that to say yes to everything is to dilute your energy until nothing worthwhile is achieved. And the greatest victories of history were not won by those who scattered their efforts across many directions, but by those who chose one direction and pursued it relentlessly, shutting out every voice that tried to lure them. CHTR 15 Mastery of the mind is not a single act, a quick technique, or a temporary effort, but a lifelong journey of conscious awareness, deliberate practice, and unwavering commitment to shaping thought, emotion, and action into harmony with the highest vision of yourself. And it is in this final realization that you understand that everything you have learned, practiced, and endured has been preparing you for this truth. You truly become what you think, for your thoughts are the architects of your destiny, the invisible hands that sculpt the life you live, the relationships you build, the opportunities you attract, and the peace you either experience or chase in vain. Mastery does not mean the absence of struggle, doubt, or failure, but rather the ability to rise above them, to see them as temporary visitors rather than permanent residents in your mental home, and to redirect your inner dialogue with patience and strength whenever negativity attempts to reclaim its place. A master of the mind is not someone who never experiences fear, but one who does not let fear dictate choices, not someone who never feels anger, but one who refuses to let anger consume judgment, not someone who never encounters distraction, but one who trains attention to return again and again to what matters most. To arrive here, you must recognize that self-mastery is built daily in small choices. The choice to think with gratitude instead of resentment, to speak with encouragement instead of criticism, to act with discipline instead of laziness, to persist with faith instead of surrendering to despair, and each choice strengthens the mind's ability to remain steady no matter the storm outside. The journey of mastering your mind requires patience, because transformation is gradual, much like the growth of a tree that begins with an unseen root system, nourished daily before the first leaf appears, and so it is with the mind. You may not notice change immediately, but every time you replace a limiting belief with an empowering one, every time you discipline yourself to act despite resistance, every time you pause to reflect before reacting, you are strengthening the roots of mastery until they grow unshakable. A master of the mind also understands that true control is not about domination but alignment, not about suppressing emotions or denying desires, but about channeling them into constructive expression, using even anger to fuel courage, fear to sharpen awareness, and pain to awaken compassion, turning every inner state into a servant of purpose rather than a tyrant of chaos. And perhaps the greatest mark of mastery is peace, the quiet confidence that no matter what happens outside, you remain centered inside. No matter what circumstances bring, you know that your thoughts will shape your response, and therefore your destiny remains in your hands, not in the hands of chance or fate. When you reach this level of awareness, you see how powerful your mind has always been, how many times it led you astray when undisciplined, and how much it can elevate you now when trained. And you begin to realize that the external world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the inner world you have built. And so you guard your thoughts as treasures, you cultivate them as gardens, you direct them as rivers, and you discipline them as warriors, knowing that the quality of your life will never exceed the quality of your mind. Mastery is not the end but the beginning, For once you understand how to command your thoughts, you open the door to limitless growth, boundless creativity, deeper relationships, greater impact, and an enduring legacy. And though the path requires effort, it also offers the highest reward, the ability to live consciously, intentionally, and powerfully, shaping your destiny not by accident but by design, becoming not merely a thinker of thoughts, but the sovereign of your mind, the true author of your life, and the living proof that indeed you become what you think.